Good afternoon.
Good,
Good to see you both.
good afternoon. Lovely to see you as well. Thank you so much for taking us out of turn today, Mr. Chairman, and esteemed committee members. Lovely to see you all. Representative Owens and I are here today to testify on H.386, an act relative to consumer health data. So, apps monitor our sleep, they check our heart rate, they keep track of our periods, and they follow along our pregnancies. And we have filed this legislation, H.386, in response to a renewed national focus on privacy. And the fact that this hearing today is scheduled 2 days, maybe, after the anniversary of the Dobbs ruling really underscores why. So the legislation, I just want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of what this bill does. We try to define what health data is, and we attempt to put the control of our health data, which should belong to us, in the hands of the individual. The legislation defines health data as anything related to individual health conditions, treatment, status, diseases, and diagnosis. But we go further and talk about social, psychological behavior, medical interventions, surgeries, procedures, use or purchase of medications, and then things like bodily functions, vital signs, measurements, or symptoms, as well as efforts and to conduct research into these areas and location data that could reasonably indicate a consumer's attempt to acquire or receive health services and supplies. It requires businesses who trade in this data to get the informed consent of users, and consumers need to understand why their data is being collected, if it's being shared, and with whom. The legislation does include a ban on the sale of data, and it gives the Attorney General the ability to enforce the proposed legislation. So for those who are interested, there is no right of private action in this legislation. You all just got an email from an organization saying that there is, but there is not a right to private action in this legislation. Finally, again, consumers need to make sure that they have informed consent and opt in to allowing their data to be shared. Now, this legislation is something that we have been working on for quite a while now, and we've been working on it in conjunction with other states that have been moving in this direction. So we worked hand in hand with the state of Washington, which has filed and passed similar legislation. And we've worked with attorney generals in New York and California as well to try to see if there's a sort of nationwide approach as opposed to just each state kind of going it on their own. We've also tried to get feedback from numerous organizations. So of course, we reached out to GLAAD, the Lawyering Project, the Electronic Foundation, the Digital Defense Fund, and other organizations that may or may not even be in the room here today. Interestingly, this legislation is going to be part of a study that Northeastern University is conducting on states' response to privacy, and we're looking forward to sharing the results of that study with you in the fall. Again, when we file legislation, things change, and we, in our conversations, have come to the conclusion that a few of the things we filed initially may not have been drafted as well as they could have been. And so we are going to submit to the committee some suggestions that we have, and we're hoping, of course, for a favorable recommendation, but truly for the ability to work with all of you to come up with something, because we think that this is really an important topic and a place where Massachusetts can really step up and lead.
Thank you to the Chair Cronin, Chair Chan, members of the committee. Thank you for taking us out of turn. Just want to, so Rep. Sabadosa mentioned some of the things that the bill is going to do. We'll talk a little bit about why. Because regulations on medical data, the status quo looks like the Wild West. Currently, the data brokerage ecosystem, it consists of companies that they collect, they analyze, buy, sell, and share data on individuals. And the customers of this data include advertising firms, but also insurance providers, banks, financial institutions, law enforcement, abusive individuals, criminal scanners, and potentially foreign actors. People may be generally aware that HIPAA protects their medical data, but what they may not realize, and through our conversations, we know a lot of civilians, quote unquote, don't realize, is that none of those brokers are covered under HIPAA. And they can monetize that data, your data, with very few legal safeguards. And it can be surprisingly easy to get a hold of this data. Duke University just released a report, I think in February, detailing how accessible the mental health data was available from some of these data brokers. They found that data brokers were marketing highly sensitive data on individuals' mental health conditions on the open market with minimal vetting of customers and few controls over the use of purchased data. One broker they found was selling highly sensitive mental health data, including names and postal addresses of individuals with depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety issues, panic disorder, cancer, PTSD, OCD, and personality disorder, as well as individuals who have had strokes and data on these people's races and ethnicities. And some of this data, maybe the anonymous data, was available for as little as $250. These companies were also unwilling to discuss the provenance of that data, which is very worrisome, particularly after big health data breaches like the recent one suffered by Harvard Pilgrim. And this is data that we really want to keep from bad actors. People are starting to notice how much information these companies have access to. I know my Facebook feed is full of ads for medications, clinical trials, and online diagnostic tools for conditions that members of my family or my social circle are impacted by. And you may have seen Apple just launched their big ad campaign highlighting their commitment to keeping health data private. But by the way, many tech companies that operate internationally, they're already set up to follow the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. I looked at Fitbit's privacy policy just this morning, and it has a whole separate section of protections that are available when collecting health and other special categories of personal data from European users. There's no reason why Massachusetts residents shouldn't have access to the similar protections. The bill's modeled after legislation passed by the state of Washington, as Rep. Sabadosa mentioned. There are 5 states that have comprehensive data privacy laws in place. Connecticut, New Jersey, New York both have legislation pending for health data specifically. Texas has a biometric data privacy law on the books currently. So if we want to be a leader, if we want to beat Texas, we have to act now. As we've said, we've been reaching out to privacy advocates, academics, tech companies. We have some language. We're happy to work with the committee to get this bill, to make the best bill possible that we can. And thank you for your time. And we're happy to answer any questions now or through the process.
Thank you. Questions for the committee? Dean?
Here's the amount. $250.
That was a study from Duke University. They had somebody go and make phone calls. So they called about a little over, I think around 20 data brokers, somewhere in that range, got responses from about a dozen. Some of them were very willing and very aggressive when they found out there was a sale opportunity. And some of them were offering anonymized data that would be less expensive. Some of them were offering subscriptions to a database that you could access at any time over the course of a year. Those would be more expensive. So that's very variable based on what data that you are interested in buying. You can imagine some bad actors really wanting as detailed data as they can. We see texts and emails and things from people, trying to get our other personal information. And I think it's really important that we have these safeguards.
Additional questions? Hope seeing none. Thank you both for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
I just want to remind committee members when asking questions, just please